Welcome to episode 55 of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast. I am one of the co-hosts, Stephen Rothberg of College Recruiter. We believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career, and that it should be easy and efficient for employers to hire them. My co-host, Peter Zollman, is having some technical issues. He may join us part of the way through, but we don't really need him, right, Jeff?
No.
I think between the two of us, we're more than enough trouble already. Jeff and I have known each other for since I think around 1999. I think when you became a job board consultant. Maybe for the viewers who don't know you, maybe you can tell them a little bit about like what you do, what the job board doctor is, and they'll understand why we're having this conversation today about Indeed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter. I am a consultant that specializes in working with job boards. I call myself a business consultant for job board operators. And I've worked with hundreds of job boards around the world since 2009 as a consultant. And before then, I worked for, originally got into the industry through dice.com, a little tech board. And I handle all kinds of aspects of job boards and just love it. And I am proudly a job board geek. So
awesome. Well, and regular viewers of this and other stuff will know that that Jeff and I do not live all that far apart, about 5 hours drive. I'm in Minnesota, a little bit north of where he's at in Iowa. Hopefully your weather is as beautiful as it is for me today. We're at 50 degrees, which for the rest of the world is 10 degrees Celsius. I would say that Mother Nature is definitely drunk, and I am buying the next round. So why don't we get into the meat of the conversation? Yesterday, I saw that you posted to LinkedIn some big news out of the Indeed world or Indeed universe about them changing their mind about charging employers on a cost per application basis.
Yes, it was interesting. I follow a number of news sources for my blog, and one of them is the SIA Staffing Analyst International newsletter, and they led off with a headline that says, "Indeed to pull pay per application pricing starting December 18th," and I was gobsmacked because about a year ago they had launched pay per application pricing for all their employers, and it said it's the future of recruiting. That was something that started out as optional and then became mandatory. And they sort of flipped around and, they made a statement saying basically a core component of our commitment is our pay to performance value, where employers are charged only when they see results. To uphold this, we continue to explore and testing and innovative approaches. Pay per application was one recent test aimed at providing greater value to employers. And that pulled me up short because at the time they had indicated that this was not a test. This was the future of what was going to happen on Indeed. So of course I felt I had to put this up on LinkedIn and let people know. And Steven saw it and a bunch of other people saw it and everyone started chattering about it. So.
Yeah, well, me chattering about something is, I think that happens on every day of the week that ends in the letter Y.
Right.
So love it or hate it, that's the way it is. But so Indeed had, I guess they're kind of going back to having another model, but what they brought in around this time in 2022, our friend Peter Zollman is joining. What they brought in 2022 or announced, and that was going to become mandatory, was they're going to get rid of the cost per click product. They would have either the cost per application, candidate applies on Indeed, and Indeed sends the data to the employer in the background in some way, or Indeed sends the candidate over to the ATS. That was, I think they call that the pay per started apply, PPSA. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. PPSA is still a thing, right? They're not canceling that.
Right. But, to be honest, PPSA is essentially the same as CPC.
Yes.
It's exactly the same thing. It's the same level of information back to the employer. It's paid for in the same way, but it's a new name. So
yeah, if Indeed can see that the candidate has applied because they've done it on Indeed or on the ATS, but there's a pixel or
right.
some kind of integration, then those employers were eligible to go under a cost per application basis.
Right.
But otherwise not. So Peter, I know you were having some technical difficulties. Are you with us? No, you're muted. So
Let's
you're
try
muted. So,
again. Are you hearing me now?
okay.
Oh
Yes.
We
man,
are.
some days, computer decides to restart, and I spent 20 minutes getting in early. A lot of good that did me. So I presume you guys have been having some seriously huge chuckles about this whole Indeed backtracking.
Yeah. So we were just like talking a little bit about the background of it, how Jeff saw it, posted it to LinkedIn. We got into a conversation how it does not apply to the PPSA product, the Paper Started Apply product. One of the problems that I see with the way that Indeed kind of created the product, Jeff, and I'm curious about your thoughts, is that it seemed like they rolled it out to everybody, not a select group of clients. And I suspect with 2020 hindsight, they probably had wished that they had made it optional from the beginning so that the clients who wanted to buy this way that are probably more sophisticated would have, rather than making it mandatory. Do you sort of feel that
Well,
way? I'm thinking also like from your experience with job board clients, like others that have done this,
I think
how it's worked well.
I think two things happened in retrospect. I'm guessing on the first one, but despite what they said about testing it out with employers and out in the field and all this sort of stuff, I suspect that didn't really happen in any sort of structured way because they really seemed to be caught flat-footed when they got this wave of unhappiness from primarily small and medium-sized businesses about the way the program was playing out. And then
The funny thing about that, by the way, is they're smart people. You would have thought that they would have really gotten it right 6 ways from sunrise.
right.
And that's very surprising. And I'll get to my theory in a minute, but you had 2 points.
They have a history of executing brilliantly.
Right. And that really surprised me. And so when they reacted to this initial wave of unhappiness, I thought they did the right thing. They fessed up. They said, hey, okay, we're not going to force it down everyone's throat. If you want to go to CPC, if you want to stay with CPC, you can still do that. We're going to put some limits on the way the costs accumulate on the product. And so things seemed to calm down for a while. But then what I started noticing is that there was this sort of series of events that made me wonder if everything was happy behind the Indeed curtain. And I'm going to be writing about this in more detail in my newsletter next week. But I sort of am looking at this through the lens of what I would call new Coke. Indeed is essentially got a new Coke problem. And if you're...
And we're talking Coke, this kind of
Coke the drink,
not
right.
this kind of Coke.
Stephen, stop it.
Stephen comes from a different strata of the job board world than the rest of us do.
Yeah, he's dealing with college students and recent graduates. It's funny you say new Coke because Greg Spencer, our writer, used that analogy about 6 months ago, the new Coke versus old Coke. And they've obviously gone back to old Coke. Greg said to me yesterday that he thought it may be that everybody was just getting too many applies through AI and, generative AI and people applying and applying and applying. And thus it was killing them on paper apply. But we talked to them yesterday, or we got them to comment directly to us. And they said, no, it was just too hard. And I got to say, I agree. Greg's been doing some more digging and found that a lot of a lot of employers are still saying they got hammered with too many applications. They got surprised because they didn't reject them in time. And as a result of I didn't reject them in time, I got burned on cost and so forth and so on. It looks like, to their credit, they finally gave up. To their debit, it took them almost a year. They made some really crazy comments. I mean, I talked to Raj Mukherjee 2 months ago, and he said, we've just about got it fixed. It's not perfect, but it's close. Nothing's perfect. And we're just, we're just about ready, and everybody's happy. And they gave me all the examples of all the employers who were happy with it and happier with it. And then turn around and it's gone.
Peter, Peter, if I'm remembering correctly, that was at their annual conference in Austin in September.
Nope, in Atlanta in September.
Okay. Oh.
And they claimed they thought they had it nailed. Obviously, not so much. By the way, we're going to ask Raj to come on the podcast again, and we're also going to see if we can get, if not Raj, somebody else from Indeed, because we want to talk to him, find out what happened. But ultimately, I think they just decided it was too difficult. Down the road, this is the best way to hire people: is, pay per apply or pay per hire. It's just too darned complicated. And it'll take a lot of work, and maybe another 4 or 5 years before Indeed and other recruitment sites like Stevens, like, the others, can get it right. It's difficult. It really, really is difficult.
So we're running out of time. 2 quick things. One is, Jeff, you referenced your newsletter next week, Tuesday, jobboarddoctor.com. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, can you peek ahead, put your crystal ball out? Where do you think, if we look ahead a couple of years, do you think the CPA pricing is coming for Indeed, the industry as a whole? Big player, small, big potatoes, small potatoes?
So I think it's a mixed bag. I think Peter pointed out correctly that technically it's a challenging thing to do.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that someone's not going to crack the nut on that, but you have to wonder, when you've got the world's largest job board that was already expert in pay-per performance, throwing all their effort against this particular problem. And I assume a lot of money, a lot of time went into it, and they were unable to solve that problem. It reminds me a lot of something I went through personally a number of years ago, working with eHarmony, who was convinced that matching was something that could be done with candidates at the same level that eHarmony does with dating. And they put 3 years of effort into it. I don't know how much money, and they gave up the product. So is this something that technically is never going to be accomplished? I have no idea. But I do think that Indeed is staring down a really big hole, because they, being the largest job board out there, have everyone coming after them: LinkedIn, niche boards, programmatic, aggregators, et cetera, and they just rolled out their new Coke, and it was a flop, and they've got to find something to replace it.
Yeah.
But just operating as they always has can replace it, because they're the big dog. We're out of time. I apologize for being late. I'm glad we got to do this. We're going to ask Raj to join us, and we're also going to ask Indeed to send somebody. And in the meantime, there's a lot more to talk about next time.
Yeah. And
thanks, Jeff.
Viewers, share your thoughts in the comments. I can tell you from College Recruiters' perspective, as of October, CPA is our biggest product. So there are some of us that are doing it.
And we at the AIM Group are going to have an update on this in a few hours. Greg has put together a good update.
Awesome. Great. Cheers, gents.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.